Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another episode of First Impressions, the video series where I give my thoughts on films that I've been meaning to watch for a while, either new ones, old ones, medium ones. Anyway, today's a film that I heard about a little bit ago from my friend OCP Communications Mike. The concept sounded novel, so it's been in my Netflix QA for a while. I was flipping through stuff to watch last night and I'm like, you know, this film is only a little bit over an hour and that's about how long I have left till about the time I go to bed, so what the hell. That movie is the 2014 horror comedy, which leans a little bit more towards the comedy angle, I will admit. WolfCop. Directed by Lowell Dean, it stars Leo Fafard, Amy Matysio, Jonathan Cherry, Sarah Lind, and Jesse Moss. Now, from what I read on IMDb, the film was made for about $1 million, and it does tell at times, sometimes mainly with the effects, but it's still entertaining enough, the concept is novel enough, and the budget does not get pushed far enough. And I mean that as in, it's not pushed to the point where we're like, oh, okay, that could have been done way better. It's like certain things like, okay, that could have been slightly better, that could have been a little better. It's not like how Harbinger Down was, where you're like, okay, they needed a way bigger budget to pull off this idea. With this movie, the idea still is executed pretty well. It's just like to fine-tune some of the effects, they could have used another $1 million or so. But even with the amount of money they had, it still is a good film. I wouldn't call it a great film, but I would call it good. And that might be a little pushing it just a tad. It was an entertaining film. I mean, it's basically the type of film you would imagine you'd get with the title WolfCop. Anyway, the plot of the film is our main character is Loup Garou, which is a play on the French term for werewolf, Loup Garou. He's an alcoholic cop in a small town called Woodhaven. He spends most of his days either asleep at work or at the bar, something that the sheriff constantly makes fun of him for. I mean, the first time he's up at a reasonable hour, he's like, oh, you're up, I'm impressed. Anyway, his friend Willie Higgins constantly is phoning in, complaining stuff, and he's the one that they always send to go deal with it. At the beginning of the film, one such incident happens, and Higgins is complaining, yeah, there's Satanists out in the woods, man. I've been hearing heavy metal music out there all night, man. That's not exactly how he talks, but that gives you an idea what type of character Higgins is. Anyway, Lou goes out there. Nothing that night. Next night, he's called back there again. He goes out there, and he's knocked out. He found a pentagram, found some other guy, and he was knocked out with a bat. He wakes up in his bed, in his underwear, and he notices there's this pentagram carved into his chest. And as the day goes by, he starts to have a little bit of flashes about what could have happened. And it turns out he's been transformed into a werewolf, and he turns into a werewolf at night. And the first transformation is in the bar he goes to in the bathroom, and this is the scene where you see the good things about the effects and the bad things, because the werewolf transformation as a whole is done pretty well. I mean, it's $1 million budget in today's money, so it is good, but you could, you know, some of the effects you could look at and say, okay, that could be fine-tuned a bit, but it's still effective enough that it looks pretty good. And also, since it's a practical effect, it has more of that charm than if it were to, say, be a bad CGI effect, and you'd be like, because I will admit, I'll take a bad practical effect over a bad CGI effect any day of the week, but as Harbinger Down showed, there is a limit. The only effect that really, really looked laughable in that scene, I'd say, would be, because he's using the bathroom to go number one when it starts, and he starts peeing out blood. It's like, alright, that looked, we didn't really need to see that for a close-up, but that looks super fake. Anyway, the transformation scene I think is pretty cool because it's like his body is ripping off of him. And I mean, they even find the face that comes off the next day when they go back in. As you can expect, he kills some people, but it's in his next transformation that the film really starts to pick up. And that's the one where he actually puts on the uniform and we actually get to see a wolf cop. He goes and stops an armed robbery. He's taking some booze as payment and breaks up a meth lab. And then, of course, the ending scene ties up the mythology of the series. I mean, it does end on a note where there could be sequels, which from what I hear, there is a sequel called I think it's called Another Wolf Cop. It debuted at a festival last year, but it hasn't come out yet. But I will say I do like the poster as a throwback to the Cobra poster. No, getting a little off topic, but the lore of the series is interesting, involving a werewolf being used as a sacrifice so that these people can use its blood in order to shapeshift. That's a little different. I mean, werewolves being used as sacrifice is probably not a unique thing, but for shapeshifting, I think it might be. Which, if you think about it, makes sense, because werewolves in and of themselves are kind of shapeshifters, and I know the Native American version of it, the Skin Changers, they're basically shapeshifters. That's the only one of the few positive things I can say about the Twilight series, is that it actually brings out the old Native American werewolves and shows that, there's not just one type of werewolf. And it also mentions the whole thing about Native American skin changers being feared, but could be in a better film. Like, I was thinking maybe trying to use it in a story, or try to come up with an overview for a story involving Native American werewolves, but that's another day, another. Now, the acting in this film is what you would kind of expect in a film with this title. Some of it is decent, but then there's a couple scenes where I'm like, alright, that could have been stronger, but it's not like it takes me out of the film and it's like, okay, I'm bored. It's just one of those little minor nitpicks, because I did enjoy the film. I mean, I liked Leo Fafard as Lou the WolfCop. You believed him as a drunk cop, but then when he actually turns into a badass as the WolfCop, you do believe it, because he's a werewolf. He's impervious to harm, and he just has that presence about him that you believe him in the makeup. Which the makeup does, for the most part, look decent. I mean, it's $1 million budget, so for the most part, it is going to look pretty good. But there are a couple things about it, like the hands in a couple shots do look kind of fake, especially the nails. You're like, yeah, that's plastic. They could have done something with the lighting, or maybe colored them a little bit better, but that's a nitpick. I mean, I'll take that over the fake-looking penis they had earlier, but that's a different thing. Amy Matysio is Sergeant Tina. She does a good job for what she has to do. She has a couple good lines. Like, though there's one where she could have added a bit more sarcasm when her answer was, "I'm a police officer," in response to "How did you find me?" One problem with that is she's supposed to be a sergeant, yet she does not have any stripes on her shoulder. Call that a nitpick if you want, but I work with cops at the courthouse. The sergeants and corporals there have stripes on their shoulders, and they're sheriff's deputies, like what these guys are supposed to be. And granted, these are small-town sheriffs, so maybe they don't have it in the budget for it, but I would at least, as a director, be like, can we get at least one stripe for her shoulder so we can differentiate her between him? I mean, we know there's only 3 people here, but at least have one of them have stripes. And she's also supposed to be the employee of the month, so Jonathan Cherry as Willie does fine for what he has to do. Sarah Lind is Jessica, okay. Aidan Devine is the chief. he plays this character like how you do expect it to be played. The plot twist near the end notwithstanding. I kind of saw that coming, but I didn't know if they were going to go there. But when I saw it, I'm like, yep, they go there. Now, what I didn't expect was the thing that they tied it into, but I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. I should have seen that coming. It was one of those things like, yeah, I don't know if they're going to go that way. He probably knows about it, but I'm like, oh, okay. The thing involving the mayor, like, okay, I should have seen that coming, especially with some of the scenes where Lou was doing his research about what was going on with the hunts, because he kind of ties it together, all the stuff that's happening more recently with stuff that happened in the past. And it's a nice little scene when he's in the library, and then what makes it even funnier is he stands up, looks at the librarian and some other people, and he's like, "Do you have any books on devil worship?" It's like, ooh, a small town library, not the right question you probably want to be asking, especially if this was in the Bible Belt. They probably look at you and go, "Son, what do you mean we got any books on devil worship? What kind of weed you been smoking, officer?" Oh, another little touch I liked is that he can't eat wolfsbane as a werewolf. I'm like, that's a nice little touch. Wonder if that's actually based on something in certain werewolf mythologies, or if that's just a little tongue-in-cheek reference to the Wolfman thing. Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers at night will become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. There's nothing really else much to say about the film. I mean, the fight scenes that we actually do see are pretty decent. I like that we don't actually see the full WolfCop until his 3rd transformation. I mean, we see a little bit of him in his 2nd one, and then we don't see him at all in the 1st one. We just see the aftermath, which it's nice, that little less is more approach, and also makes you anticipate what he's going to look like, even though the posters show it, but within the film proper, we don't have a good idea. Like I said, it is a novel concept, held back a little bit by its budget restraints, but they do what they can with what they got, and it still is an entertaining film, especially with the title. You know what like I said before, you know what you're getting with this title. And I do look forward to watching the sequel whenever I could find it. Hopefully it's on Netflix in a little bit. It definitely comes with my recommendation if you're a fan of horror comedies and films with outrageous titles like this, especially if you're a fan of 70s and early 80s exploitation. If he hasn't done a review of it already, I hope that Good Bad Flicks reviews this film, because his review of this film would be epic.